In the past few years, the number of kiddos that I have seen with significant behavior challenges and a diagnosis of oppositional defiance disorder, ODD, has continued to increase. And so a lot of you out there have probably heard of the super common diagnoses of ADD or ADHD, but may not have heard of ODD, that oppositional defiance disorder. And they are very much tied together. And so what I'm going to do in this video is break down exactly why that is, what's causing this dramatic rise in behavior issues in kids, and of course get you some natural drug-free options to help calm the storm in your family. And I know and hear all the time from parents that this defiant and disruptive behavior, when it takes over, it can destroy the quality of life for really the entire family. And you stop wanting to go out in public, you stop going to social events, birthday parties, whatever it may be. You're not going out to eat as a family, or maybe even not even going on vacation, right? Because the stress and the worry of your kiddo and your child having a major meltdown, behavioral breakdown in public makes you choose to just instead take what seems to be the easier route and just avoid it altogether. And I can't blame you for that, right? But we can help. And so if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, affects up to 11% of kiddos and adolescents, and I think that number is rising, just like, quite frankly, all of the other rates for chronic child struggles as well. And so if you are a parent of a kiddo who is displaying persistent patterns of angriness, argumentative behavior, or just super oppositional, right? Using that word no, or we've got a kiddo in here who kind of stonewalls that we're working on right now. And if you're seeking that hope, those answers, and those drug-free solutions to help your child thrive, this video is for you. So we're going to dive into ODD. We're going to explore how really it's the imbalances in the autonomic nervous system and the vagus nerve that play a huge role when it comes to all of this. So let's dive right in. The first thing is identifying the neurological roots of ODD, right? We need to look at that autonomic nervous system, or what's called the ANS, because the ANS is what regulates our body's unconscious functions, right? And the ability to just run on autopilot, which we don't really think about, right? And so there are really two big factors of this autonomic nervous system. That's why it's called autonomic, because it happens automatically, right? We don't have to think about it, it just does it. And that is the sympathetic nervous system, or your fight or flight stress response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, or your rest, regulate, and digest calming response. And so in children with ODD, as you can imagine, there is going to be an imbalance between these two sides, right? With the overactive sympathetic nervous system, stress response, fight or flight being more dominant, and the calming, regulating side being underactive. And that obviously is going to lead to heightened emotional reactivity, impulsivity, difficulty in self-soothing, all of those types of things. And at the heart of this autonomic imbalance is something called the vagus nerve. Now, the vagus nerve is starting to get a lot of hype in health circles because it is super, super important. And really what it is it is a critical component of that parasympathetic nervous system, or that calming side of the nervous system. And it's responsible for calming and regulating heart rate. It's responsible for digestion. It's responsible for calming inflammation. It's responsible for our social cues. It's responsible for emotional well-being. And so research suggests that children with ODD often have what's called lower vagal tone, or not as strong of a vagus nerve. And that's going to thus indicate reduced capacity for emotional regulation, stress resilience, adaptability, all that type of things, which we see that with kiddos that certainly have that ODD. We see it with kiddos with ADHD. We see it with kiddos that are struggling social, behavior, emotional as well, all the time. And so how does this happen, right? How does this nervous system dysfunction, dysregulation, and imbalance get there? And the reason or the cause of it is, quite frankly, multifactorial. I know that's the hard answer to get, but a few of the factors that we see correlate with this all the time in the office is high stress fertility and pregnancy journeys. Birth trauma is a big one. Even if it wasn't, to you, felt like a super traumatic birth, was it stressful and traumatic for baby, right? Did they have to yank and pull them out by the head and neck? Did they have to use a vacuum, a big old plunger, and pull them out and put a lot of stress in a super fragile and important area. This is right where that vagus nerve starts. And so when we see that with kiddos, that can be a big part of it. High levels of toxicity and inflammation for whatever reason when at a young age. And then that just really starts to kind of get this perfect storm cycle going, is what we call it, right? And so it's one thing that adds to the next. All of a sudden it gets going and going and going, and now we've got this kiddo who is just stuck in that stress, fight or flight mode every single day. And as a neurologically focused pediatric and family chiropractor, that is exactly what we specialize in. We dive deep into the nervous system dysfunction in kids who are struggling with ODD and behavior issues, and we find what's called subluxation. And subluxation, as a chiropractor, basically means that that stress is stuck on, right? So like we talked about, that stress gets in early and often, and it just gets stuck in there. And now these kids are just living life with that stress stuck in their system. And luckily our bodies are super adaptable, but we don't necessarily always want them to have to adapt and compensate to stress being stuck in, because eventually that starts to catch up. And so we see early warning signs of this all the time from kiddos who aren't sleeping well, who kiddos are colicky, who kiddos are struggling with constipation early on. And as opposed to growing out of those things, they grow into some of these things like ADHD and ODD. And the best part about all of this is that we can find it. And the way that we find it is via our INSiGHT scans. If you've heard us talk about them at all, they're basically just sensory scans that are able to give us all this information about your child's nervous system. They're able to tell us, is there an imbalance between the sympathetic stress response versus the calming parasympathetic response? Is there more energy in the system than what needs to be? Is there stress stuck in the system and subluxation? And so in order to get to the root cause of your child's ODD, it all starts with identifying what is the actual problem, right? And the way that we do that is through those neurological INSiGHT scans and finding out, is your child's nervous system indeed subluxated? Is it dysregulated? Is it imbalanced? And is it stuck in that fight or flight mode? So if you feel like you've already tried seemingly everything under the sun for your child's ODD or just general behavior issues, even if they don't have an official diagnosis, but you are just stuck in that constant cycle of stress, stuck in that constant cycle of not wanting to be as social, not being able to do the things you want to do because of the worry of these meltdowns and tantrums and emotional behavioral struggles coming full-fledged at the worst, absolute worst times, right? Send us a message. Let's go ahead and get your kiddo scanned. Let's get an idea if the nervous system is indeed the root cause, and then we can go from there. It's really hard to provide a solution if we don't know what the core root cause is. But the second we can identify what that core root cause is, it gets a whole heck of a lot easier to provide you with a solution, a care plan, and a route to improvement for your kiddo. So we are here to help. Reach out, send us a message. We'd love to help. Have a great day.